Well, if the name Danny Gokey sounds familiar, you're probably a fan of American Idol. Perhaps the most touching story of season 8, 6 years ago, was hearing that just 4 weeks before auditions began, this young man lost his wife. But he is declaring hope in front of me in book and in song. And it is a real treat to have you here. Welcome to Canada.
Thank you, Mara. Thank you so much.
Have you been up here?
Oh yeah, I've been to Canada several times. It's actually one of my favorite places to go to. I love Canada, especially in the summertime. I've done shows up here, and when I do shows up here, I'm able to go and explore and eat the great food. It's just a really great place. Have great memories.
Good stuff. Well, that means there's a good chance we're getting you back.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Can't wait to have you sing here again in just a moment. But you know, we're all curious about the real experience of American Idol. And you made the top 3. You were
top 3 in that year. In 2009, 104,000 people tried out for the show. Oh. And so you know, they call it the cattle call and they go to these big cities and just thousands of people come out. I think in my city, Kansas City is where I tried out, there was 10 to 12,000 people, and they dwindle it down. You know, the people that really make the show, you know, the top 10. I mean, think about that, 10 people out of 104,000 people. Chances are very slim, but, you know, God did a miracle. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I just think of the waiting in that cattle call.
Oh, without a doubt.
Masses of people.
It was a 12-hour wait, and people waited longer. You file into this arena. That's why I love they call it a cattle call, because it's herding you everywhere, like a herd of whatever, cattle. And so anyways, you know, we're sitting in a seat, and I just remember just seeing like this process, feeling so insignificant, feeling like, why am I here? I wanted to run with everything inside of me, because you're hearing all these amazing singers that are they're in the hallways practicing, and I'm like, well, who am I that they're gonna think anything of me? But they saw something.
They sure did, and we sure did. And I'm just surprised to read that you were an emotional mess, you say, through the whole thing. That's not what we saw, Danny. No. We saw a strong man of faith, amazingly, putting yourself out there, performing in the wake of the very recent loss of your wife.
Yeah, actually a month before auditioning for the show, my first wife passed away unexpectedly. And, you know, I made a promise to go on the show that year already. You know, I promised her, and not only that, you know, it was the last year I could try out for the show. They had the age cutoff limit.
Now or never.
Yeah, it was now or never. And think about it, at that moment, I'm like, you know, I didn't want to try out. I'm thinking, man, I'm in a horrible place right now. I just lost. You know, when you go through a loss, it almost feels like an amputation happens. You lose a part of your soul. It's very, very difficult to explain.
You've been married 12 years?
Well, no, actually with her, I was married. We dated for a total of 12 years, but we were married for almost 5 years. And it's just one of those things, you're so close to someone. You know, the two become one. You don't really realize what that means until you lose them. Yeah, it's torn, exactly. And so part of me most of me actually did not want to try out for the show, but there was that small part that says, you don't have next year again. And what if God, I remember there was a question, what if God is going to use this situation and make something good out of it? And so I put one foot in front of another, and I walked out. And I'm so glad I did that, because a lot of times, you know, we get into a terrible situation, and we tend to think, you know, somehow if I just, you know, bury myself, something's going to change. And nothing changes. You have to keep moving forward. Just like a book, you have to keep turning the page. You can get stuck on a chapter in a book, and you can question, why did this happen? This is devastating. This is horrible. But like God says, He writes your life like a book. Just like that book, you got to get to the next chapter, because you don't know what else is coming. And I'm so glad that I turned the page and I didn't get stuck, because as I moved forward in faith, God met me. It's almost like the ram in the bush and Abraham. You know, he's coming up one step, that ram is coming up one step. And God met me where
He'll meet you more than halfway.
Absolutely.
Just put that.
But you got to get up and move. And I know there's probably a lot of people right now listening and watching who have encountered something difficult. Yeah. And at that moment, you want to bury yourself. But that's the worst thing you can do. Get up, keep moving forward, keep having faith. God will work it all out.
I love your counsel at the end of the book, and I won't highlight all of the encouragements, but you say identify something to live for.
Yeah.
Find a community.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, your church can be that.
Absolutely, and church is a big, I mean, how did I get started in singing? Church. You know, and there's so many great singers who've made huge names for themselves. Where did they start singing? In church. Church is that place where you automatically connect with relationships, and they need singers. You know, they need different people to do different things inside that community. And so if you have a gift, they automatically pull on it. And so that's where I got started. I also was able to start an organization called Sophia's Heart, where we take in homeless families. It's in honor of my first wife. And that is definitely something to live for, to know that families are off the street and they're being housed, they're being clothed, they're being fed, and they're given a hope and a future. That is that thing that I live for, you know, and that's that community that, you know, sometimes we think that, you know, as we're helping these homeless families that it's changing them, but actually it's changing us. It's changing our heart, because it's like you see the strength that they possess.
And that's one of your points, is give yourself away.
Absolutely.
Get out of yourself.
Get out of yourself. And this is a hard one. You know, I think as human beings, we're so self-focused because we feel like if we don't fight for ourselves, who will? But it's the opposite in the kingdom of God. It's the fact that give yourself away, give yourself fully and completely to God, and then watch God meet you and give you the desires of your heart. You build God's dream, which God's dream is always people, and God will build your dream.
Jesus said if you try to save your life, you're going to lose it.
Absolutely.
But if you will lose your life for his sake, you will find
and it takes
your
such
life.
Yeah, it takes such faith to realize that, because at that moment you're giving yourself away. You're wondering, God, are you going to meet me? God, are you going to do what you said you were going to do?
But he never fails.
Never fails. And we just got to get it out of our own time and our own mindset of what we think God should do something, you know?
He likes to stretch us.
He does. And that's why you got to fully give yourself away. Jesus didn't, in the back of his mind, he didn't sit there and say, well, you know, what if this, you know, what if I go to the cross and God doesn't keep his part? No, he went all the way. Even when Peter said, I love it. Peter said, Lord, you'll never take this cross. He said, get thee behind me, Satan. I mean, that's how, he had those thoughts come to your mind, and you have to battle those thoughts right away. Because if you entertain that thought, it can mess you up.
You say if you hadn't dealt with your negative emotions,
Yeah.
you would have missed everything. We have more to share. You know what I want to ask you?
Sure.
This was the year, okay, Chris Allen was the idol.
Yeah, he won.
Adam Lambert.
Took second place.
Second place.
Third place.
Here's third place right here.
Man
Danny
right
Gokey.
here.
Yeah. Let's just enjoy this moment. Scott McIntyre,
Yeah.
our good friend. He's been
Scott
on this
McIntyre.
program many times. Legally blind, he sees
Yeah.
what you would see if you looked through a small straw.
A coffee straw, the little red straws.
Little tiny thing, and we were so proud of him, proud of both of you there. Was he an encouragement to you?
Oh, Scott was just the best. And, you know, since Scott had the disability with the scene, he'd always bring one of his family members on the show because he needed help getting around and stuff like that. And his brother, Todd, was just a great person to hang around. Both of them, they're so funny. They're great people. They live in Nashville. They're kind of basically our neighbors in our backyard, you know, so to speak. But they're just a good hang. It's weird, though. We both live in Nashville. I have so many, you know, artist friends who live in Nashville. It's so hard to hook up because when I'm in town, they're out of town. When they're in town, I'm out of town. But, man, we love getting together. Scott,
it's another aspect of community for you.
Yeah, it really, absolutely really is. Scott is just, he's a great hang. He's a great person. He's the real deal.
Now, are you going back on Idol? Is this a rumor? Or?
So, okay, so I came back, you know, when I released my first album, and now we're working on a second album. I just signed a record deal with BMG, and you're gonna hear some songs, you know, obviously from that album. But my team has now reached out to Idol, you know, now that we have new music, and now Idol is doing their pitch inwardly, and they're looking at to see if they can get me on the show.
You should come on and perform.
I would love to. It's up to them now.
So
it's in God, you know, ultimately it's in God's hands, you know. And so we just tell them, here we are, you're ready to come back, and now hopefully they'll make some room and we'll come back.
Okay, you keep an eye on it, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I've watched it a few times since I've left the show.
Yeah, poor old Harry Connick Jr. He's sort of assumed the position of
Simon?
And I think, you know, J-Lo and
Keith Urban?
Keith
Yeah.
are kind of in cahoots against him because he's the mature musician. And anyway, I find it hard to watch the dynamic there.
You know, the funny thing is that you need that Simon type personality because sometimes like the judges want to be cute and just compliment everybody, and it's like, you know what, that just doesn't work. You know, we want to, because what we're hearing is not what you're saying as far as judging. So, and what maybe Simon or Harry Connick is saying, that we kind of agree with him, and so. I don't know, it's always that weird dynamic of judges up there, and there's always that little tug of war that goes on.
You are a multifaceted person, Danny, and a wonderful light for the kingdom.
Thank you.